Oliver Tree has been absolutely exploding on all platforms, and some people think it's because of the quality of music he makes, while other people think that he's an absolute marketing genius and that his antics make it so people just can't stop talking about him. In this video, I'm going to get into the story of Oliver Tree. Oliver Nickel was born in 1993 and raised in Santa Cruz, California. It wouldn't take very long for him to start playing instruments because at just the age of 3, he would pick up and start taking lessons on the piano. His parents really both wanted him doing something from a very young age, so he enjoyed the piano at first, but eventually they started kind of forcing him to go to these daily lessons. 3 years later, there was light at the end of the tunnel because he went to a store called The Starving Musician. At this store, he found a guitar that he absolutely loved. It was a pig-nose guitar with a built-in amplifier, giving it a very unique and distorted sound. Oliver was in love with the guitar from the second he got his hands on it and would turn to his father and ask him if he'd be willing to buy it. His father would say no, but Oliver would immediately start saving up his allowance, deciding that he wanted to play this guitar because, again, he loved the uniqueness of it, which was a sign of things to come for Oliver. A few weeks later, he had saved up enough money, he went and he purchased this guitar, and he would start taking lessons daily for the next 5 years. At 11 years old, not only would he be taking lessons, but he would be recording music with his father. With that being said, his voice wasn't the best at the time, but he said over the years he was able to shape it up and turn it into what it is today. But on top of recording this music, he would also be playing the baritone in his school band. So every day, or at least multiple times a week, he would be recording music with his father, taking lessons, and playing the baritone in school. He was already chipping away at those 10,000 hours. A couple years later, he would end up joining a rap group in high school and recording with them every day. For this rap group, he would also start producing some music so they had beats to work on, and this would evolve into him becoming a DJ for a little while. Now, right away, he had some success joining some shows with his school and some people in the area, and he would even get to open up for Skrillex one time. There was an agency at this show that was impressed by Oliver's performance, and they would end up getting him more opportunities to open for artists such as Tyler the Creator and Frank Ocean. The music industry can be a dangerous place for anybody, but a 15-year-old actually having success would absolutely fall in with the wrong crowd, and that's exactly what ended up happening with Oliver. He would join a band of these kids who would just take psychedelics and play the same songs over and over every single day. It was a waste of his talent, and it really stunted his growth from all the DJing stuff. There was no end in sight for Oliver as he explored just about every drug in the book. That was until Burning Man. Burning Man is a festival that takes place in Nevada's Black Rock Desert every year. It has like a rave community to it, and at the time, Oliver was absolutely interested in going. He would go there and have potentially the worst and best experience of his entire life. It was the worst experience that he could have ever had because he had a very bad trip that day, would end up running into the desert, seeing his own death, seeing his family mourn at his funeral, and eventually being so psychotic that he was smashing his head on the ground. Now, he did end up getting out of this and saying that it changed his life. After this, he valued life so much more, he felt as though he was given a second chance at life and decided immediately to quit all drugs cold turkey. And he also, after doing this, felt as though he had wasted so much time working on everything else and not the DJing path that was absolutely open for him. So what he decided to do is, with the time that he had free from when he used to spend it taking drugs, he would fully dedicate himself to music to distract him from the old vices. The next 7 years, Oliver would start making a lot of music. Singles, EPs, albums. I'm not going to talk about them too much, but if you're interested in hearing about them, they're on a SoundCloud account called the Ashwood Project. There's a rumor that Oliver really supports this and wants his old music being shared, but the label won't allow him to do this. But as far as I found, there's no sign of him ever saying this. With that being said, all of these songs would lead to him releasing a project called Splitting Branches. This album was truthfully one of the most interesting parts of making this video. We saw Oliver go from being Criff to being Oliver Tree. He was working on a sound that's a lot more similar to what he does today, but he was allowed to fully express himself. He had no label looking over his shoulder, he had no audience to pander to. It was Oliver expressing himself any way that Oliver wanted to. The product of this was a really interesting, unique sounding project that still sounded very polished and like it was from someone who actually knows what they're doing in music. At this point, Oliver was well beyond his 10,000 hours, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind, and this project would also catch the attention of a label. Just 6 months later, he would return, but this time he had R&S Records behind him, a label telling him what to do and trying to force him down a pop lane. On this project, he would have a cover of a Radiohead song called Karma Police, and he would get a cosign from one of the lead singers of Radiohead. The thing is, with this whole experience of this label, Oliver wasn't very satisfied with it, and these days he only describes it as a chance for him to understand how to allocate the funds correctly for when he eventually signed with a bigger label. It's really unclear if there are more complications during this time with the label because, again, he doesn't say anything positive about it, and after this time he would also decide to transfer over to the California Institute of Arts and take a little hiatus from music. During his time at Cal, he would start looking into what he could have done to make it more likely that his music succeeded, and the first step was him researching the band Gorillaz. If you're not familiar with Gorillaz, they had a reputation for being extremely genre-bending and were very popular in the early 2000s. Eventually, he found himself feeling as though there was no real successor after Gorillaz and feeling as if he could be the guy to pick up the baton and bring it just a little bit further. He didn't want to copy Gorillaz as he felt he really had an innovative style that could do what Gorillaz was doing, but in a completely different way. With this, he would end up dropping another song that would gain some popularity.
I shut my eyes and my mouth and my legs just
When I'm Down was a collaboration with Wentham that would give Oliver a ton of momentum and prove not only to him, but to Atlantic Records that he could have a very bright future in the music industry. So bright that they were willing to sign him within a month of the song's release. Around this time, Oliver would end up moving in with the two Viners who were popular for the Suh Dude videos. One of them was a DJ named Getter, who Oliver would work with a lot in the future, but both of them gave Oliver a first-hand example of what virality can do for any individual. Not long after meeting them, Oliver would also start making vines, and it wouldn't take long for one of them to pop off when he played a character called Turbo.
What's up? My name's Turbo. I'm 32 years old. I love to dance.
Turbo would come up multiple times in the future as Oliver started experimenting to see if he could make more vines that were popular with the character and pivot them into getting attention towards his music. It seems as though as he got more interested in going viral consistently, he started looking into what some others were doing around that same time, like Soulja Boy, Filthy Frank, and plenty of other examples from the early 2010s. With this, Oliver would end up working on his senior thesis for his time at Cal Arts, which was how to turn yourself into a meme. There was one thing that Oliver had cemented in his mind at the time of his graduation. Memes were extraordinarily undervalued, and that he was going to take advantage of it. Atlantic would ask Oliver to release a few singles before they would give him an album release date, and little did either of them know that this process would end up being delayed for 3 years. In the meantime, Oliver would start taking marketing a bit more seriously and more as an art form because he wanted to be working on art of some sorts. This would see Oliver doing more antics than ever. The first example being that he would release YouTube videos that would get more views than some of your favorite YouTubers. He would have a lot of interviews with some of these social media personalities and fake beefs with them, and there would also be some other fake controversies. But on top of all of that, in the time preparing for his album, he would have one of the most expensive music videos of all time with his song, Hurt.
I'm sorry if I hurt you. I'm sorry if it got that bad.
Now, the reason he was able to get this big of a budget is because his previous music video, which contained a monster truck, a horse with a bowl cut, and pocket rockets, had done very well. So this time he decided that he needed to go to Ukraine, do some more stunts of his own, and get a tank. Now, the music video would mention multiple times that Oliver would have to reach 1 million views in the first week to warrant the amount of money he was spending on this video, so I think he had some sort of deal with the label where he would be allowed to release the album if he got 1 million views in the first week, and that's why he went all out to the degree that he did. With that being said, it absolutely passed 1 million first week and would get many more views than that. Following this music video, Oliver would finally get the day to release his album, Ugly is Beautiful. Despite being so delayed, this album performed very well and solidified Oliver as a force to be reckoned with. On top of all that, it got a lot more attention towards his antics and must have had the industry thinking, should we have more artists doing some more outrageous stuff, especially for some of the smaller labels. With that being said, the impact of that can't be entirely known, but I'm sure some of the crazy stuff we've seen in the last few years is inspired by Oliver. Following this album and the breakout single, Life Goes On, he would end up posting multiple remixes of the single and having multiple late night show performances with multiple different outlets. Allegedly, he got banned from some of these outlets, and I can't find out whether or not this is true for certain, but there is some evidence that they were hiding certain parts of his performances or not airing them altogether. With this being said, he would start more of his antics with his recent album, Cowboy Tears. Now, this album still did good for just any artist all around, but for Oliver, it was a bit of a dip in performance compared to his last album. Looking into the reasons why, it could be that he didn't have as much strong marketing behind it, but he did have some absolutely huge things that got some attention, such as featuring Belle Delphine to get some attention towards the album, and going on his regular media run of a lot of interviews and a lot of controversies to go with that. Since the album's release, he has gotten a bit more attention from his feature with Boy With Uke on the song Sick of You, and his feature with KSI. I think both of these songs are performing pretty well, looking good for Oliver Tree, and getting his name back out in the public. Now, real quick, I do want to leave this video with one thing, because I saw some fans talking about it, and I don't know what direction he would go in with it, but do you think Oliver Tree will be dropping under the pseudonym Lil Ricky? We already know he's had the fictional character appear on multiple of his interviews and everything like that, but is it going to be eventually Oliver releasing under that name and getting his own money rather than dropping under Oliver Tree and having Atlantic take a percentage?